Actually, I ran on two different occasions in two separate years. I ran 200 miles in a week because it was just an experiment. I had time off. I was a grad student my first time in 1975, and I had this loop around Jamaica Pond. Crazily enough, I did most of it on this loop.
What's up, team, and welcome to another episode of the Run Healthy podcast presented by Recover Athletics. As a runner in Boston, there are a few athletes more legendary than Bill Rodgers. Boston Billy may have been born in Connecticut, but when you win the Boston Marathon 4 times and run 100 laps of the 1.5 mile loop at Jamaica Pond in 1 week, the city of Boston is going to name you as their own. Bill is one of the great marathoners in American history. He's won every road race you can think of, many of them more than once, and has managed to log over 180,000 healthy lifetime miles. Today on the show, my good friend James Randon and I talk with Bill about how he managed to turn himself from a smoker into a marathoner and have fun while winning more races and running more miles than you and I can ever imagine. I hope you enjoy our conversation with Bill Rodgers.
We will jump into it now so that we don't bang our heads against the wall any longer.
Yeah. I've never been really good with technology, but it's very interesting and it's exciting to try this. And it sounds like you have an interesting idea here about dealing with injuries and getting a lot of different feedback on this issue, which is such a huge issue, you know. And so I'm glad to join you today.
Awesome. Yeah, we were inspired by our experiences in running. I mean, I know James mentioned this to you already. He runs professionally, and I am a mere hobby jogger, but the injuries problems are still real. So we worked with a couple of sports therapists and physical therapists from MGH and Harvard Medical School on the project, and it's pretty exciting. So far, we've got like just over 1,500 runners in Boston using it and doing kind of proactive stuff to help them stay injury-free, which is really exciting. Yeah.
This is the key because, you know, a couple of different things. I think the new runners, they are the ones that have the most issues. Those are the ones that are going way out on a limb. And by way out on a limb, you know, when they do extreme distance or hard track work, whenever you go to the extremes, you know, it's more risk. So you have to learn how to back off on that, you know?
Totally. And that segues really nicely with the first thing that I was thinking about. So I'd love to start our interview with some investigative reporting. So your training logs from the mid-'70s are the stuff of legend on the running-related internet. You can find these things and look through your old mileage books. And I read once that you and your training partner, Tom Fleming, once did 210 miles a week in 3 a days or 2 a days, like 30 miles a day average. 2 questions.
Yeah.
One, is that real or is that hyperbole?
No, that was real. Actually, I ran on 2 different occasions in 2 separate years. I ran 200 miles in a week because it was just an experiment. I had time off. I was a grad student my first time in 1975, and I had this loop around Jamaica Pond. Crazily enough, I did most of it on this loop, but it was right near my house, near drinking water. You know, I could get a drink. It was flat, one little hill. It was beautiful around this pond. You know, I could just kind of zone out and put my mouth in. It was like, can I do this? You know, I'd heard of other people doing it. That's what it was, kind of an experiment.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot about your training group at the time, and it sounds like, you know, now you can like look up on the internet or like go to the British Journal of Sports Medicine and read research that's been done on like training and injuries and things like that. But were you and your group just sort of experimenting on yourselves and just trying to figure it out as like one big experiment?
Yeah, I would say pretty much so. Though I knew of people like Kenny Moore from Oregon who had done an individual 30-mile training run before his marathons. And Tom Fleming was a high mileage runner, and I was too. You know, neither of us have a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers, so we kind of relied on our mileage to build our strength. So there's a physical and psychological component. You know, when you can knock off a 200-mile training week, you feel like Superman.
Very cool. And how did you manage to stay healthy during that? I mean, that's a big amount of volume by anyone's standards in history.
You know, the thing is, James, Nick, you know, I started running very low key when I was in high school and on a grass track. And I was like running on grass. So whenever I could, I've done that. So I think that helped me avoid injuries. But also, when I was becoming a marathoner, after joining the Greater Boston Track Club in 73 or so, we didn't do anything too intense on the track. In fact, I never have. I very rarely have. I was someone who relied more on the mileage. So I built up very gradually over a couple of years and experimenting with a few different marathons. My first was Boston, and actually it was a complete wipeout. I dropped out because it was a hot New England day, and I didn't have any experience in pacing myself. In those days, there were no pacers.
Sure.
And there wasn't enough water, and I didn't know how to, run a smart race.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that takes some time to learn. My first Boston Marathon, I ended up walking the last few miles, and I had some major dehydration problems. So many years have gone by, but not much has changed, I guess.
Yeah, Boston, I really think that Boston is the trickiest marathon of all the majors. And of all the marathons I've done, and I've done a pretty big marathon on 5 different continents, like Stockholm in Sweden, or Amsterdam, or Melbourne in Australia. But Boston is a tricky one because of the hills and the spring weather. It can be so dicey. It can be like when Desi Linden won in that cold rain, or it can be 86 degrees or 82 degrees, and it's just tough because we're not used to it coming from New England or the Midwest or something.
Yeah, totally. I feel like every time there's a warm winter, you have a cold Boston, or if you have a very cold winter, it's a very warm Boston. Like, it's especially hard on the local athlete.
It's not a friendly marathon.
No, sir. Well, you mentioned your high school coach, and it seems like he was really ahead of his time, Frank O'Rourke, in terms of his understanding of the sport. And I saw in an old interview that he even had you guys doing strength training and lifting weights and stuff. Today, if you look at the pros closely and follow them on social media and stuff, you can see that they're all using weight training, maximize performance, combating injury. But you must have been kind of a trailblazer on that front.
Yeah, we didn't really run much mileage when I was in high school. We had a grass track. It was a field, and he put lime down to make our lanes a fifth of a mile loop. But he was a former 800-meter guy, pretty strong body type. I was more of an ectomorph body type, but our track captain was a discus shot guy, so he was strong. So we would be doing, push-ups and jumping jacks and all kinds of strengthening cardio mix. So we did a lot of that. We didn't do that much running. It was kind of a good way to begin.
That's so interesting. When you were doing the super high mileage, long stow distance type training, did you keep the strength training as part of your regimen, or was that something that wasn't as critical for you at that time?
Yeah, I always have done some kind of strength training, and usually whenever I finish my runs, and when I became a full-time marathoner, I trained twice a day. One longer run, one shorter run. And after each run, I would usually do 50 sit-ups and something like 50 sit-ups after each one. Then I also use light weights, like a couple days a week, like 3 days a week. I would use light weights like 15-pound dumbbells, presses and curls. So I did stuff like that.
That's super interesting. Yeah, that's kind of the backbone of the technology that we've built is helping runners kind of get connected to the right type of strength training. But it's cool to hear that you guys were doing that before that became really mainstream as an idea.
Mm-hmm. I read about how Jim Ryan, the great American miler, was involved with a very heavy weight program. Of course, he's a 1,500-meter, 800-meter guy. You got to have tremendous strength over a short period of time. So he would do weight workouts, and then he'd go out and run. I mean, I never really did that. I would do my weight training afterwards, And I didn't do it as extensively as someone like Alberto Salazar, who was a big believer in weight work and, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Very, very cool. James, I know James is a miler, and I know, James, you do a lot of the heavy lifting stuff. I feel like that's really the crux of middle distance training outside of the running right now, right?
Yeah, I do think that it is interesting, Bill, that you note that you always did some sort of strengthening, you were using your body one way or the other, and especially doing the light weights, because in the mile there is this kind of these trade-offs. Do I want to be doing a lot of volume and getting in that long-term strength. I want to do a few powerlifting. So I do have that final sprint at the end of my race. And I think that finding that zone is really different for each person, even within the discipline you might be running. I mean, like you said, Salazar did a lot of lifting and was really into heavy lifting, while you were very much staying away from anything particularly too hard or fast. That you seemed like you could just stay, like you could run that really long pace for a long time. That helped in the marathon.
I think Alberto was unique in that he did so much with weights, but he was always concerned about running form. And he had kind of an odd foot strike, because I knew Alberto when he was in high school. He had a tremendous, mindset, and he was very extremely tenacious, almost like to a fault,
Sure.
But I think he was really a track guy. He was a track guy who ultimately got into the marathon for a while, but his real deal was the track, 5K, 10K. And you have to have some upper body strength to duke it out there that long, let's say 5K, 10K, and that intensely. So I think all distances, some strength training helps, particularly though I think these beginner runners and the older runners and the ones that are really going to be like college competitors, high school competitors who are duking it out pretty frequently.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you mentioned the beginner runner. So you managed to build like a really sustainable career. I read that you've done over 180,000 miles lifetime, and that was as of a couple of years ago. So I'm sure that's up. But what do you think is like your number one piece of advice for runners who are looking to go to that next level, start running more miles, and become more invested in the sport while staying healthy?
There's actually a couple of different things. There's no one thing, but one is what do you want from the sport? I mean, what do you really want from it? And have you figured out your best distance? You really got to find out what it is. And sometimes it takes a while, and that happened to me in high school. But I found out, I was the 2 miler. That was the longest distance that we ran in the 60s. I'm from way back. And but I think find the shoes that really, really work for you. You have to love your shoes. And the trickiest thing is getting older, because it's really tricky then, because, your body's not working as well. So I think the more research you can do, the experiment with different models, spend some time in the shoe store with these different models and make sure you really like them. Lace both pairs up, walking them and jogging them a little. And be careful with your shoes. Don't get them a half size too small. If you do that, you could be in big foot trouble.
I thought it'd be interesting to look into kind of like bits and pieces that I pulled out from your 1974 log.
Yes.
So, there was a lot of fun, interesting nuggets of wisdom in there. You'd say, "Oh, it's too cold today." I didn't really feel it, or like had car trouble, so I decided not to run. One thing I thought was interesting in all those weeks where you'd still get in 120, 130 miles a week, so you might lose a day, or you get to 150, not lose any days. It seemed like that you were always had your attention towards what can I do to stay recovered for the next run. And I was wondering, like, how did you draw the line between today, I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to go for it, but then finding the motivation the next day to do 25 miles or 30 miles in a day? Because I think there's a lot in there.
I think one thing is, once you find the event you like, and for me it was the marathon, and I was no longer interested in racing 10K on the track. You've got to find the event you like, and then you can really get into it, And I had great training partners. I had a great coach with Coach Billy Squires. We lived right in the Boston area. I was living in Jamaica Plain, could run along all the trails there, get onto the Boston Marathon course, near Boston College, everything. We had access to the track there. So we had everything in our favor, and but a lot of it is that, as my friend Greg Meyer, who won Boston in '83, said, we had fun. We really did have fun, and you got to find the fun that you want in the sport, and I think we do that with our friends, a family member, my brother Charlie and I started running together way back, and we still go to races together and everything, and he still runs some, and I still run some. So you look for the fun parts of the sport. I really believe that distance running or running, middle distance, sprints, this is the most competitive sport on the planet because it's competed in by every nation. So I think with that level of competition, and even within the U.S., hey, your local 5K is going to have a lot of tough runners in it. So I think you've got to take your time. If you take your time, you won't get injured and you'll progress. But the more you can learn about the sport, the better you'll do. And find the people that motivate you. You know, maybe it's Shalane Flanagan or Joan Bonnett Simpson or Dina Castro or Ling Jennings, you know, the top women racers over the last 20, 30 years and stuff. Or if you're into the mile, maybe you look at some of the top competitors of today or of yesteryear. We have such history.
Yeah.
You know, we have such history, but it's hard to find that history.
Gotcha. So in a lot of ways, you felt like having that team environment was what motivated you to get the door. And sometimes
Absolutely.
It just didn't, if you weren't feeling it that day and you didn't feel like the in group of going out with your buddies, you said, screw it, I'm not going to go out and run.
I think we all struggle. We all struggle with that, and I still do. A lot of times I just do not want to run. I feel lazy. I'm tired. I've got allergies, whatever, you know. But if you make a plan, like I was a teacher for a while, and my buddy Scott Graham in the Greater Boston Track Club, he was a teacher, and we planned, let's meet in the afternoon about 4:00 in Melrose, Mass, you know, and we're going to do like a 6, 7, 8 miler, and we would do that, you know, because I knew I was going to meet him. He knew he was going to meet me, and even in the winter when the snow is out, strength in numbers, huge factor. The mental side of this sport, I totally believe that's everything. That's everything. And if you have a coach or you have a support staff or family or friends on your side, that's everything.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk a little bit about your eating habits. There's also a lot of legends that gone around that you just have a lot of interesting things that you like to combine together. For example, I've heard, this is not particularly unusual, mayonnaise on pizza, but then even mayonnaise cookies, heating up tomato soup for fluid replacement. And then you had certainly, a unique take on like how to fuel yourself. And I also heard that you weren't that much of a drinker during your competitive career. So how much was your diet, concerted, like was there effort put into your diet with relation to running?
You know, the real truth is we didn't know too much really, not like today about really, really healthy diets, you know. So like I'd travel to a race and I'd get in my host hotel and I'd order a big order of nachos with cheese, you know, have that with my Pepsi, you know, so, you know, that's what it was like, but I was burning so many calories, you know, I didn't gain weight, that's for sure, but it wasn't always smart. You know, but I also had, I was okay. My stomach didn't give me many troubles with foods, you know, and I didn't get sick too much in my travels, you know, really. You know, I was the type of person that what really laid me low was sometimes I would get viruses because, you know, I really didn't rest enough. Back in the 70s, early 80s, we were all trying to make a living. So, you know, I'd go to a marathon, I'd get $500, $1,000 to do this marathon. Well, I'd do 4 of them in a year. You know, we were all trying to build our income a bit. So that was, today the pros do 2 a year. You know, it's all different, and the knowledge is different, and the rest cycle to training, which is a real problem, I think, for us, runner types, competitive types, is when do you rest? And a lot of people will only rest when they get injured. And I was a little bit like that, but I was lucky that I built up gradually. I didn't train too fast on the track, not as hard as, let's say, John Tracy from Ireland or Alberto, you know, or Craig Virgin, you know. I'd get out there with Greg Meyer and I could stay with him for a few mile repeats, but then I couldn't, you know, I don't have that kick. He had a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers. I couldn't be with him there. So I'd have to build in another area. So for me, that was putting in some more miles. And I loved the miles. You know, not all of them, of course, but if you find courses you like, you got to have your favorite courses, you know, shorter, easier days, that sort of thing, you know. You have to make it easy on yourself every way you can.
I love the idea, Bill, of going having nachos, a Pepsi, and then waking up and running 2:11 in the marathon. That's like an American hero story right there.
You have to enjoy life at least a little bit here. When you're running, you can grind us into the ground.
I love that.
Yeah, so I thought maybe we could dig into a little bit of one of your more famous years, 1976. So you had a really interesting second half of that year where you came second in the Olympic trials. You got a little banged up at the Olympics, but you decided to finish the race regardless. And then you ended up winning New York City in a course record, and then going out to Stato Island and running what everyone thought at the time was a world record against a relay team that turned out to be short. I was wondering if you could take us through that season, talk about the highs and the lows, and really talk about what did work at the Olympics, what did work in New York City and at Stato Island.
For me, I suddenly had a chance. I never thought about the Olympic Games. I'm a fan of the Olympic Games since I was in high school, but I never really thought about it till in 75. I won Boston. I had a breakthrough. It took me 3 years to learn the course and how to run Boston, and I had a great crew of the day. So suddenly I had a chance to duke it out with Frank Shorter. Unfortunately, he was the defending Olympic gold medalist, so we all had to duke it out with this guy to get on the Olympic team. But I sort of sensed how Frank raced, and I felt I could stay with him, which I did, except for the very end, when he made sure he would crush me a little bit. Frank was the ultimate strategy runner. He was a great planner. He was a great track athlete, so he had everything on his side, I wasn't so good on the track. I just kind of left it on the side a little bit. But when I failed in the Olympics, when I developed metatarsалgia in one of my feet were in pain. My shoes were a little too narrow. And, physical therapy and podiatry were not so built up to take care of runners in those days, in the 70s. So I kind of got into the race, and it started hurting, got dehydrated, bombed out in the Olympics. It was very depressing. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I thought I could run at least a decent race. But so after that, I got an invitation. I was going to run Falmouth, and Frank Shorter and I were racing there in those years. We were rivals, And but Fred LeBeau, the New York City Marathon race director, showed up at Falmouth and invited us both to run New York. It's going to be the new 5-borough deal, And then I said, here's my chance, and it was a beautiful, cool, low humidity day, about 55. The sun's out. You're running over the Verrazano Mills Bridge. It was mind-boggling, the first one. So it was very exciting. And I just, I was fit. I was recovered from my foot injury. And so you have the good days. You have to savor them, because next thing you know, you turn around, and if you haven't recovered or something, you can get knocked back. But I was fit, and I got invited to go out to a race in the middle of I think it's the Sea of Japan, in between Korea and Japan. And I knew some Japanese musicians and runners called the
Stato Island Marathon?
Yeah, I ran the Stato Island Marathon against a relay team there, and it was another beautiful day, and I had this truck in front of me that had a big drum, and they were beating the drum. I was wearing a bandana. I was really getting into it,
Yeah, that's a good day for a world-class marathon. A drum right in front of you. I love that.
Yeah, it was wild. It was a perfect day, and it was just so different. But the weather is so key, and at least for me it is. And I was one of these runners. If I hit tough weather, extreme heat and humidity or extreme cold, like I wouldn't have done well, unlike Desi did in 2018. I would have been one of those buckling. I'm just, if it's too much, I'm over on the side of the road. And that happened to me 8 times in my marathon career. I wasn't one of these people that would dig down extra deep, No, I want to race when the racing is good weather.
Mm-hmm. So,
fair enough.
Yeah, I know that you took away some time from the sport after college. Like you said, you made that big comeback in ’75, which really put you on the spot for everyone else. What happened in between? How did you go from, liking running enough to do it in college at Wesleyan but then to then really decide, no, I want to be a serious, athlete that can win major marathons. What happened in those intervening years?
It was a process. I moved to Boston and I was working in a hospital there, and I bought a motorcycle with money from my friend Jason, the miler on our high school team, and that got stolen. When that got stolen, and I owed Jason some money for that. I wasn't making hardly any money there on my job, and so I had nothing left. And I said, I had taken up smoking after college. It was a very depressing time. I was during the Vietnam War, very, very tough time, and so just running, doesn't matter anymore, But when I moved to Boston, I saw the Boston Marathon, and I remembered Andy Burfoot, my college teammate. He had won Boston as a college senior at Wesleyan. And I remember the way he thought. And another teammate I had, I was very lucky, was Jeff Galloway. Those two guys were ahead of me, but I learned about them and how they trained. They didn't train that hard. They put in a lot of miles, but they didn't kill themselves with their training. They didn't get severe injuries. They were always running steady, just steady, because that way you don't get injured, and Jeff Galloway talks about that all the time, But so it took me a few marathons. It took me about 5 marathons, and then I really felt like I was a marathoner, that I could race Boston or New York or anywhere, and I felt like I could race anybody by that time. It took me that long though to build up,
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like it sounds to me like one of the kind of red threads through this conversation and through it sounds like your career was just the power of community, like being a part of a really committed group of people who are just like ready to grind the axe and ready to find a way to success as being the way that you found your way to success.
Everyone on the team improved. Squires was kind of a genius. He was one of these. He was a motivator. I think the motivators, there's the people that know the details of training, the science and everything, and that's very key. But Billy, I think, was his greatest strength was a motivator and the fun we had, as a team, traveling the races together and doing well, and then we'd meet Frank Shorter's team somewhere, like at the Virginia 10-miler, in Lynchburg, Virginia, or at Peachtree, or at the Falmouth Road Race, there'd be all these. So it was kind of the early days of the running boom, the first running boom. Today it's much more complex because these races are so huge. Sure. And I think for the beginners, it's a little overwhelming. So I think your teammates are even more important today.
Yeah, I love the idea of the great motivator coach. Jack Foster, one of my personal running heroes, who ran 2:15 at 44, the New Zealander, he refused to let Arthur Lydiard coach him, but he always would go hang out with Lydiard on the day before the race because he was like, this guy made me feel like I was 10 feet tall. He made me feel like I can beat anybody. And it sounds like Billy was similar to that.
Yeah, I think there's that psychological part of the sport. And it's in every sport, I think, but maybe it's more in a sport with an individual out there, like a swimmer or a cyclist or a rower. And I remember I read Michael Phelps' book a few years ago. One of my buddies has it, and it was all about the mind. He was like, impossible is possible. It's just a different breed of cat. I never thought like that. I was more like just kind of winging it all the time. I didn't, but we had fun, like Greg Meyer said, and we were willing to push because we were all improving. So if you can get with a group, you do need your group. The loneliness of the long distance runner, that's a Hollywood movie and a great book. But the real truth is you need your teammates. And we see that with the Kenyans, the Ethiopians, the top Americans, the top Japanese, we always see that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and I agree. Although it's hard for me to hang with James, even on his easy runs, I think that that moment of getting to go out and be with your friends on the road is what the sport's really all about.
Absolutely. I always say you need someone who's faster than you and someone who's slower than you. Like when I try to do some hill repeats with Greg Meyer from the University of Michigan, they used to do those at college, and I hadn't really done those in some years. I would do some hills in my training, but to do them hard, like a minute uphill repeat, I couldn't stay with Greg. He was stronger than me, but I was a good downhill runner. So you got to look to you're always trying to build yourself up in a certain way and finesse this sport. How do you finesse it? What are your strengths? Well, everyone's got strengths, everybody, and you have to find that out. You find that out, and what do you like about the sport, and what distance do you like? Then when you find your distance, it's like you're ready. You're ready.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Well, Bill, this has been such a fantastic conversation. We can't end without the big question, and this is something that our friends who are going to listen and the people who are going to listen in Boston would be remiss if we didn't ask. But we know that you have this obsession with Jamaica Pond, and I wonder, what is the magic in that 1.5 mile loop that drew you to run it so many times?
You know what? I lived right across the street from Jamaica Pond. And so it was like when I was a beginning runner, when you're a new runner, you're afraid to go too far from your home. You're like, well, where am I going to run? And it was new to me. And I discovered the pond, and I saw everyone out there walking and running, and this is perfect. 1.5 miles around, that's a good distance. If I want to do 3 laps for a 4 miler, that's good. And then I can just go home. I was building I was trying to build my strength and my cardio, and it was just a beautiful little spot. I love, the water and people out there fishing, and it was relaxing. It was just like, I don't know. It was a beautiful place to try to make a comeback.
Sounds great. I mean,
I love that.
We live over in Porter Square right now, which is very close to Fresh Pond. I actually saw in your 1974 log, you said, wow, ran this new loop over in Fresh Pond, and it's pretty nice. So that's kind of our Jamaica Pond over in the Cambridge area. But I've done a ton of running over Jamaica Pond, and I always think about all those miles you crushed out there.
Yeah, I remember Fresh Pond. That's a big loop around, and Lynn Jennings used to race there now and then, and just a famous site. But I think everyone, no matter where you live, especially today, with the COVID virus hitting us and everything, we got to find our loops where we can be kind of free, because that's what running is all about. But protecting yourself and others, and still have the loops that you really love,
Definitely.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining us. This was super great. I know that all the runners who are going to listen are going to have a lot to take away from it, little tidbits and also some grand wisdom. I know you mentioned your book. Do you want to chat a little bit about that so we can let the people know about Marathon Man?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. My book, Marathon Man, it's really about my brother Charlie and our best friend Jason when we were in high school, 15-year-olders, starting to run, and why we all quit the sport. And most people do quit running, at some point, sometimes for a year, sometimes for a few months. I quit for about 1.5 years, but because I couldn't run. We couldn't run together. It's what I've been trying to say. You need your friends, your teammates, to be out there. When we could all get together again in Boston, we started running again. And that's the key. But also to find, like I said earlier, finding your distance. But it's also about my quest to try to win Boston. What it was like, and my friend Tom Fleming and my buddies Joe Martino and others. You make so many friends in the sport. It's like the ultimate sport for that. The ultimate sport of friendship or goodwill, even though we sometimes duke it out and might even hate your fellow teammate who just beat you sometimes, ever so briefly. There's a lot of angst in this sport, but I think in the end, the friendship wins out all the time.
I totally agree. Yeah. Very wise. Bill, this is super cool. Thanks so much, and thanks for battling through the technical difficulties.
All right, this is good. I'm going to put it on our store site,
Absolutely. I love that.
That would be good. And keep cranking out, you guys, okay? But don't get injured. Name of the game, don't get injured.
That's what we're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do. See if we can hopefully help many people avoid the injury gremlins.
See you on the trails and the roads, okay?
Absolutely, Bill. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning into that conversation with James, Bill, and I. It was so cool to hear about Bill's training philosophy and how he leveraged the energy of the local runners in his community to achieve the great things that he did. Also, the idea that he was doing regular strength training in the 70s before it was cool, and that he attributes some of his success and some of his injury-proofness to that is pretty incredible. If you're looking for a resource to help you run injury-free, definitely try the Recover Athletics app. It'll help you strength train, injury-proof your body, and run your best. I also definitely recommend you check out his most recent book, Marathon Man. I read it in preparation for our conversation and can confirm it's a must-read. You can get a copy at BillRogersRunningCenter.com, and he'll even autograph the book for free. Reach out. Let us know who you'd like us to interview. Until then, run healthy, be well, and we'll see you on the next episode. Same time, same place.